Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 most legendary Ark tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. In at number 10 we have got ourselves the Crystal Wyvern, and this creature is here simply because, come on, it's the Crystal Wyvern. Compared to the normal Wyvern, I find it is just a much better creature, and it is so much better for me that I have to put it on the legendary creatures list. It's kind of a marvel, a miracle if you will, that this creature is actually in the game. A Wyvern, and even a better version of the Wyvern that is significantly easier to tame than the normal Wyvern, and also just generally a lot less hassle on servers, as a lot less people tend to be on Crystal Isles than maps like Ragnarok. Ragnarok is actually the most popular Ark map out there, at least I'm still confident it is. I'm not sure where Fjorda is at, but I'm pretty sure Ragnarok is still the king. Also, on top of that, you might be saying, well, Wyvern spawn on Scorched Earth. Well, they're really just a pain on that map. Whereas on Crystal Isles with the Crystal Wyverns, you can simply just get the Primal Crystal, you knock out one of these things, and you can get the Primal Crystal from them, and then it'd be level 60, passive tame them, and boom, there you go. The personal favourite of mine is the Blood Crystal Wyvern. I just really like the abilities that it has. This is the Tropical Crystal Wyvern, but a lot of you out there in the comments below have been saying you really love the Ember Crystal Wyverns, and they definitely are a really good one as well. And if you've never tried out Crystal Wyvern before, if you're anti-Crystal Wyvern as well, really try one out for yourself. And if you've tried them loads and then you still hate them, then that is the only excusable excuse for not liking these things. Continuing on, we have got ourselves the Snow Owl. This creature can be found all across Extinction, and I think it can also be found on Fjorda as well, and it really is one of those gold stars. It gets a gold star from me, if you will. This creature is just so great in its density of abilities and its just general use. Like, PvP players can use this thing, PvE players can use it. It's not very one-sided, it's so versatile in all of its features. Namely, it is a glider, which means you can really rack up some serious speed with this thing. It does definitely help. Yes, Managamas have a lot of speed on them, but still you can actually gather quite a significant amount of it with a creature like this. You're not really missing out too much. They can't quite get to the same speeds, but still there's a lot more control I find in a creature like this, at least at my current skill level with flying Managamas. They also do kind of have a UV heat seeking. It's not UV, is it? It's infrared. It would be for heat. Either way, they have a infrared heat seeking ability where they can see heat coming off of any organism, and I'm not sure if just general hot things like lava show as well, but that should just be pretty obvious anyway. You can kind of use it like a night vision camera as well. Also, if you level up down on these things, not only can they fly longer distances, but you can also heal up creatures with them, which again is just going to make these things really nice to use. It is ideal to have a creature that can heal others in this way. Like, yes, the Daedon does definitely do a good job at healing creatures, but I find the Snow Owl just has it better. And also with Snow Owl pellets being useful for gadgets as well to get some insane loot out of them, they really are so versatile, and you should definitely use one of these things at some point, considering just how easy they are to tame. So, a fan favourite of many at the moment, and obviously just ever since release. It's not really a trend thing. This has always been at the top of many lists ever since it was launched. I'm not actually sure when. It's a 2023 creature. It released at some point in that time. I think later on in the year, but it could have been earlier on as well. Again, my mind is really not the most up to date with things like this. Time goes by so fast, doesn't it, really? And you look back at all these things and you're like, actually, when was that? Either way, the Runner can be found on the island and also the Lost Island, and I find on normal Ark these creatures are quite rare, whereas on ASA they're a lot more abundant. I don't know what it is. Is it just like how the spawns work, or is it just some kind of placebo where I'm just like, oh yeah, more are definitely spawning, when actually no more are spawning? I haven't really played much ASA anyway, so it's not that I've played more. Either way, looking on it, the Runner is an extremely strong tame which you can find in the swamp biome, and it really is going to be extremely useful for that job. Not only because they can deal heavy amounts of damage, but also they can pick up a large range of creatures as well, and on top of it, they're just heavily mobile flyers which are really capable. They're really strong in what they do, and although their tame method is pretty much just a rehashing of the Reaper, it's still a really cool one to walk through. And now with the net gun and things like that, this tame actually does become quite a breeze. It's a lot harder, especially if you go for the 100% effectiveness. I find that not really to be the most useful on a creature like this. That's just my personal preference though, but you know, you might think differently. Comment your thoughts down below. Are you a pro 100% effectiveness on running Agathas or against it? Because it seems to me a lot more effort than it's worth, and they're really not that difficult to tame anyway. Just get yourself the highest level one that you can find and tame it. Just normally, you don't need the 100% effectiveness. If you have the resources at the time, then just go for it. You might as well, but you know, for me it's not really worth it because they're not really boss creatures and they still really do pack a punch no matter the effectiveness. But it obviously does matter on the level. Some really low level ones tend to really lack in the health department. In at number 7 we have got ourselves the Argentavis. This creature is here, as for me it is just one of those kings. I can't live in Ark without an Argentavis in the map. Spawns all over the island and really is a popular one among many, including myself. It is so capable of gathering things like metal, crystal and obsidian, especially considering it has weight reduction on them. Obviously it's not going to be doing the gathering, but it's going to be doing all of the heavy lifting and the carrying. Obviously you can pair it with Nanki and a Dodic, and then you can gather all that metal, crystal, obsidian, stone, thatch, wood, even depending on what creatures you're using. So there's a lot of versatility you can get out of a creature like this. Also, people do give them a bit of a bad hit sometimes for their slowness, whereas actually I find they're not the slowest things out there, and especially considering that you've got a very high stamina and very high weight stats, they are a lot nicer to use than something like a Pteranodon in my opinion. Yes, they're not as fast, but you don't have to take as many breaks, especially if at the time you don't really have a very high level Pteranodon, because you tend to be taming lower level ones as they are kind of first flies in the game, but obviously you will get some higher ones later on. But still, even with 150s, I find they're a bit lackluster in the stamina and weight department still, whereas the Argies really aren't, and you can really push with an Argy. On top of that as well, their saddle does act as a portable smithy, which is just a really nice addition to have, and also a nice regen buff is gained if you kill something or if you just eat any general dead corpse. Now, I'm sure you all did expect this creature to be on the list, and yes, we have got ourselves the Shadowmane. This is just one of those creatures where it is so improved from something like the Thyla. It kind of seems a little bit mental why you'd still be using those, apart from their climbing ability and also just general accessibility. I'm not saying the Thyla doesn't have any use anymore. You can still definitely use it. It is a great creature. It's not like it's had all of its ability stripped from it, but there's just less going for it now since this creature's been released. And I know it's been released for a while, but still, you know, the Thyla's been around still for a lot longer than this thing. It is fast, agile, can go invisible, has the hydration buff, deals tons of damage, has natural armor, and no saddle is required. And although the tame method can be an absolute pain pretty much all of the time, they are really nice to have, and also they're pretty decent underwater as well, which you might not expect, but you also might expect considering their code name in the game is Lionfish Lion. So, you know, they better be good at swimming, and they definitely are. Really great boss creatures as well, and just general all-rounders. They've got the mobility, they've got the damage, they've got really everything going for them in a small carnivore. In at number 5, we have got the Bloodstalker, and I put this creature here as I find it is so useful for doing any kind of like underwater exploration. And I know you can get Megalodons and Mosas and Basilos and all those creatures to be able to explore those underwater environments, but I find with a creature like this is the top tier one out there. I have found nothing better ever since I started using it. Firstly, you can skim over the top of the water, and also once in the water it has an incredible amount of speed, and you can see all the aggros of the creatures nearby as well, so it really does generally benefit you. And I'm not sure if it has the kind of neutral mode as well. I haven't actually used these things within the past week, and my brain is failing me because I've had some other musicy stuff going on, if you were wondering, by the way. Either way, these creatures incredibly great for underwater travel, but also just incredibly great for normal travel as well. They are so ideal for general travel as long as you have some kind of elevation in the area. It's not going to work on just flat plains, but they still do have a decent amount of speed in them walking, although it can be a little bit of a drag, and there's some better creatures out there just for walking across flat plains. You can find some creatures which will vastly excel compared to the Bloodstalker in that asset, but this has other uses. Also, on top of that, they actually aren't the worst damage dealers out there. You definitely wouldn't be bringing these things into boss fights. I'm not even sure if they're allowed into boss fights, probably not, considering their like grappling abilities all around, but they're not actually the worst damage dealers, and you can actually, if you get a high level one, deal some pretty decent damage to some enemies. You'd probably be surprised actually. Now, I'm sure you expected the Desmodus to be on this list. Come on, it is the Desmodus after all. Probably my favourite or second favourite glider really, considering what's coming up next on the list, although that one does work slightly differently as it's technically not a flyer, and although this does have the gliding ability, it's still a flyer, but it glides in a way. The next one is just generally a glider. It's not the Rock Drake. The Rock Drake is sadly not on this list. Sorry, it's not a legendary tame for me. I know it's a really great creature, but still, you know, it's not quite for me. Whereas the Desmodus definitely is. You've got Sanguinary Elixir. It's an absolute cheat for tames. Obviously, that gliding ability is going to warrant you tons of speed, which is really nice. They can go up onto walls and vertical surfaces, just like a Tapu Jara. They're much better than a Tapu Jara, by the way. Much more worth your time as well. The exact same tame method as the Bloodstalker, simply just get some blood bags and they will eat it out of your inventory, and boom, Desmodus. They do also need a saddle as well, but that's fine. Also, you get additional armor with the saddle anyway, so it's usually a good thing to have the saddle than to not. Also, on top of this as well, they can go invisible and pick players off riders too with absolute ease. In at number 3, we have got ourselves the Maywing, and this creature really did have to be here for me. Come on, it is that cute platypus glider which has an incredible amount of speed and incredible amount of use in the traveling aspects. They really are OP creatures for this, especially considering you can get them around the time that you'd be getting yourself a raptor. They are some of the most OP creatures considering how early on you can get them in the game, and if you have access to them, I implore you, please get yourself some Maywings and start training on them and get good at flying them. They might seem a little bit difficult and a little bit clunky, a little bit quirky at first, but trust me, once you get used to them, you are never going to want to turn back from these things. They are the ideals, and it's actually nice when you just transfer one onto your server in ASA. There's just a lot more that you can do on the island once you've got a Maywing on the map. Just travelling is so much easier. You thought Pteranodon was fast. Look at the Maywing. These things are absolute zoomers across the map. Not on the generation standard though, that's a different thing. Either way, also these things act as a portal feeding trough as well. Just great if you like your breeding. Also, these things can skim across the top of water, and they're pretty good barrier gatherers as well with that cute belly flop of theirs. Really useful, great legendary tames. In at number 2, we've got ourselves the Reaper. This creature has to be here for me. Come on, it's the Reaper. This invented that pretty weird and very innovative and interesting taming method that we all know and love from the Rhino Ganathor. Obviously, it's basically just a reskin of it, but essentially this is the creature that started it, and for me, it is so much more legendary. Just taming a Reaper for the first time is probably one of the coolest things that you can do in the game, especially if you do it on Operation or Gen 2. Feels a little bit like a cheese because it's so easy, unless you obviously still do it the normal way, but still it just generally is easier because you've got flyers on that map and you've got gliders and all of those things. I know you have the Rock Drake on Operation, but still you're very limited for traveling creatures on that map, and they're so deep down under in the depths that it really does add a lot of good sense of progression once you actually finally get one of these things. And even once you tame one, or once you're impregnated by a Reaper Queen, you still want to come all the way back up into safety, and it's just such a long endeavour but such a fun one, and I definitely implore you to do it. Once you've got one as well, you can deal tons of damage. You feel on top of the world. These creatures are definitely well worth it. Yes, you've got Gigas and Crocodontosaurus, and they're legendary in their own way, but not as legendary as the 10 creatures on this list, and certainly not as legendary as the Reaper King. And finally, in at number 1, we've got ourselves the Deinonychus. This always tops the list for me. I don't know what it is about this creature, but I do, obviously. It's on here in at number 1 spot, and I'm going to talk about why I love it so much, but it's so interesting how this creature has really gripped me as an Ark player. Firstly, they've got tons of speed and mobility. It's insane actually how much speed you can get on these things, and they take no full damage, which is just really great for me. I know you can just dismount just before you hit the ground, but you lose a little bit of immersion there, because obviously you wouldn't really be able to do that in real life. Just the smoothness and fluidity of not having to do that really does benefit you, and you can just absolutely tear creatures to shreds with the bleed ability, especially considering that you can grip onto them and do this as well. You can even do this to bosses, which is insane. You can shred through bosses so quickly, especially considering these things also have the pack buff. They really do have everything going for them, apart from the hydration buff and underwater exploration, but you don't really need that for this creature. So yes, maybe it's not the perfect all-rounder, but there's no creature which really does fill all the assets, while you might say the Shadowmane does a similar thing. It lacks in the bleed ability, and it also does lack a climbing ability, which the Deinonychus has, and it also lacks the no fall damage, and on top of that as well, they can't deal the bleed damage, obviously with the bleed ability, which the Deinonychus and the Thyla can, but the Thyla isn't even allowed into bosses, so we're going to outrule that one completely. So yes, the Deinonychus really is the most legendary creature for me. Very easy tames as well, and so worth it. Out of every creature in Ark, this is the one which I will be taming the most. At number 10, we have got the Galley, and I'm sorry to all Syntac lovers out there, or just Galley lovers out there, or maybe Syntac himself if he's even watching this video, because the Galley is a staple creature for him, but for me, I really just don't like this as a creature. It doesn't really have much use to me, and it is so irritating and annoying to tame. Not necessarily just because it is a difficult tame, it's not actually a hugely difficult tame, apart from the fact they die so often when taming one. You'll need trank darts instead of trank arrows. If you use trank arrows, you're just going to kill one of these things. Once you have one, their weight isn't actually that great, so you're probably not actually going to be able to get loads of resources across the map at the speed that a Gallimimus can just go at default, because this is their default speed. Yes, albeit pretty quick, but still, considering their health and their feebleness in everything else, they really just aren't a good creature, and they're not worth the tame whatsoever. And their saddle was actually kind of expensive for what they do as well, although that doesn't make a bad creature. It's just another deficit again, which again makes these creatures just even less enticing to use for me. You can always just use like the Procoptodon, which was just there. That is a much better creature, which is just so much more robust in all of its features, and the Galley just doesn't have that, and it's kind of a shame, because there's an essence of community with this creature, with obviously YouTubers like Syntac, but most people kind of know you don't really tame the Galley. You kind of avoid this creature, and it's a little bit of the meme. And I was actually going to put the Dodo here instead, but I can't do that to the Dodo, can I? And also the Dodo is really useful for simple kibble, so it definitely isn't deserving on the list. Unlike the AI list, which put the Dodo right in the #1 spot. Definitely would not do that. Next up, we have got the Paki, and this creature kind of had to be here when you think of it. Like, this creature is so unnecessarily long to tame with its actual tame. It's not very difficult tame. It's not like the process is complicated. It takes ages to tame these things, and they're not even particularly useful. They can't even gather berries, and they kind of one use could be dealing torpor, but it's in such a controlled little area, and also it'll do more damage than actual torpor. They still don't deal a lot of damage anyway. It's just not worth using these creatures for that use, and they're just really slow and not particularly useful for absolutely anything. If they're a berry gatherer, then maybe it would improve a lot, and possibly I'm being pretty dumb, but I have never been able to gather berries with these things, and I'm pretty sure you can't. If you could, then tell me down below, and my opinion might change these things slightly, but still, I really don't think they're good tames. It's just a waste of a position. Get yourself a parasol that can gather berries, and they are so much of a better creature in the early game. Like, yeah, it could kill a raptor, but it took like over a minute for it to do this. Obviously I had to edit the video so it would actually fit in the b-roll, but it's just really not a good creature. Don't tame one. Next up, we have got the Archaeopteryx, and I'm just putting this thing here partly because its taming food is unnecessary. It uses chitin. Really, why? Also, these things spawn in the redwoods, not the friendliest biome to tame in, and since the glide suit came out, they really aren't useful, so I have to put them in the worst Ark creatures list, as there is absolutely no use for these creatures anymore whatsoever. This creature is useless. To carry this thing around, it's just a slog, and you can't really get much use out of it. Just get a normal flyer. It's actually easier to get a Pteranodon than one of these things as the biome when you tame one of these things. isn't particularly friendly, and a Pteranodon is going to be so much better than this creature, or even like any just flyer or glider. It's going to like wipe this thing out of the park. There is no use for this creature to be in Ark. But also, the cinema crops exist, so this doesn't need to be here. At number 7, we have got the Microraptor, and again, we kind of have a useless creature. This thing can't really do anything in particular at all, and obviously, maybe, yeah, you could use it to knock players off of mounts. There are just better creatures like the Desmodus can pick players off of mounts, and it still is quite a finicky use case, and it doesn't work very well or effectively. There really is not a huge use for these creatures to be used in that scenario, so they're just pretty obsolete, and again, not the friendliest to tame because they often come in packs, and they're just an absolute pain to deal with, kind of like Palovias, although Palovias do have a slight use, so obviously I'm not putting the general Palovia on this list. They don't need to be here. Next up, we have got the Oviraptor. Some people might say this is an unpopular opinion to put here, and surely the Archaeopteryx and the Microraptor are less useful than this thing, as it kind of increases the rate that eggs will be laid by creatures, but it isn't an essential thing to me, at least, and maybe to people that do want loads of them. I have a feeling it's not going to make the biggest difference. Maybe the Oviraptor is an insane creature to you, but the taming method is pretty unnecessary, and I really don't like these things as a creature, and I think their use case is kind of pretty useless, like the Dimetrodon and incubating eggs. Just use air conditioners. I know there isn't really an alternative for this creature. I just think it's really useless. Next up, we have got the Uranio, and this creature is so useless. Like, its tame method is a really annoying passive tame, and on top of that as well, it just really doesn't have much use of a creature. I'm going to put the Titanoboa here as well, as it kind of follows under a similar league. Obviously not the same tame method as Titanoboa's tame method, is arguably even worse, and that creature is arguably even less useful, especially considering the new kibble system, whereas before it did actually have a use, and nowadays it doesn't. Just these two creatures, they can't do anything. They're unnecessary tames, and there's no use to these things being in the Ark game at all. Maybe if the Uranio could climb walls and the Titanoboa was still useful for kibble, they wouldn't be here on this list, but they're useless, so they are. Next up, we have got the Pego, and I'm going to kind of put the... Well, I'm not. People might say, well, why wouldn't I put the Ichthyornis here? Well, the Ichthyornis actually kind of has a use. It can gather back black pearls and all of that stuff. So, no, it does not deserve to be on the worst Ark creatures list. And I've been throwing the word useless around, but this is still the worst Ark creatures list, not the most useless. But they are, in some ways, big synonyms of each other. But the Pego kind of does have one use, which is it can actually gather berries. What am I turning into a northerner now? It can gather berries for you, which is actually quite a nice feature for a creature like this to have. Although you're taming these things on accident, no one's actually going out to tame one of these things the way you tame one. You just put berries in your lush like your hotbar, and then it will steal them, and then it will tame. So you can tell how that would happen on accident. And all of my Pego tames have been on accident, and they're really just not useful. They don't do anything. They just sit on your shoulder and do nothing, and there's nothing that you can really do with them. Again, kind of falling into the worst Ark creatures list. It just doesn't do anything. It can't do anything, and it doesn't really need to do anything because it's not really a big part of the Ark game. It's just a huge annoyance of a creature, and once tamed, you really just can't get anything out of it whatsoever. At number 3, we have got the female Megaloceros. The male one is actually a pretty good thatch gatherer, but the female one cannot attack whatsoever, so it has to be on the list. It is essentially just used to breed Megaloceroses, so then you could get a better male Megaloceros for better thatch gathering. Don't know why my words are not working today, but yeah, this creature is useless apart from that one thing, which is why it's here. It is such a bad Ark creature. You can't do anything with it whatsoever. You can ride it, and you can jump around with it, and you can move around the map with it. It can't attack though, like the Diplo, but at least the Diplo has knockback, and the Diplo is a good berry gatherer. That gives it some merit. This thing just can't do anything. It feels like whenever you press the attack button or something, if you're looking to that, it just feels like this creature hasn't been coded properly, like there's something wrong with it. But no, there is nothing wrong with it, and if you ever tame one of these things. I don't know why you would, unless obviously you're breeding and you don't know they don't attack. Well, now you do, because these things don't attack, so don't tame it unless you're doing breeding. Really, just one of the worst Ark creatures. Why don't you at least give these things an attack? And at number 2, we have got the Compsognathus, or just the Compy. It's called the Compy in Ark. Don't know why I decided to do the whole long fancy name, but hey ho. And this creature can only be tamed with prime meat. Its torpor goes down ridiculously fast, and once tamed, maybe you could send it to attack something slightly. Really just doesn't have a use. And I'm kind of going to put the Listro here as an honorable mention as well, because it follows a similar suit. Again, kind of has a use like the Oviraptor, where it will buff something from your creatures. It will buff the XP. Just, again, for me, really just not a useful creature. You can't get anything out of these things. And number 1 is anything you really tame with the fish traps, as you do tame that creature if you let them out of the fish trap. And I know maybe you might say that's a little bit of a cheat and it doesn't count, but you have tamed it, so it's there. So coelacanths, saber-tooth salmons, trilobites, all of those things. The worst Ark tame just by far. Like, honestly, you can't use these things for anything. They're just there. Obviously, you can use them when in a fish basket to tame a Shadowmane. That's kind of nice. But you can't when they're out in this form, so that's why they're in at the number 1 spot.
And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Maciejewski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.